Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Animal. If you haven't been here before, I am the host, Mel. It's been, I would say, approximately 2 weeks since my last video, and my last video, if you haven't watched it, it was a review on Bubble the movie that was dropped on Netflix. That movie seems to be centralized around parkour, a sport that's not talked about a lot, especially in animes or in a competitive sense. This kind of stemmed into sort of a snowball effect / inspiration, and now I'm back again to talk about more sports, but unique sports specifically. Ones that you don't really see necessarily in the world as often, or televised or publicized, like basketball or baseball or soccer or football in other countries. So I think that, there's so much more in the world to discover sports-wise. Now, I will say real quick that there are one of two things that usually happens in sports, or both at the same time. One of them is that an athlete is trying to overcome a trauma of some sort or an event of some sort that has inhibited their ability to perform at their best. Or they are learning a sport for the first time, so we're getting a lot of training arcs, we're getting a lot of, concepts that are taught so the audience better understands the sport. But without further ado, let's dive into these unique sports that I honestly have found oh so fascinating, and I think you will as well. Let's go! First one on the list today is called Surunai. Surunai is an archery sport, and the show has kind of been titled after what the main character characterizes. Basically, the sound of the arrow once it's been released from the quiver. I believe it's called a quiver, or a bow, for lack of better sophisticated words. So Surunai is essentially the sound of that release. And before I dive into the storyline itself, the show does a very beautiful job. I believe it's animated by Kyoto Animations, which is really well known from some of their soft delicacies and like small beautiful touches that they incorporate into the shows that they animate. So Surunai, when the arrow is sort of released, it kind of like has like this beautiful flow to it, and they kind of like to characterize it with like beautiful blowing leaves and the wind. It's quite like breathtaking momentarily, because they also take the time to like slow the arrow down before it makes impact on the target. That, I will say, is something that I greatly appreciated animation wise, but to the storyline itself, because that's kind of what we're all interested in when we watch animes for the most part. So Surunai is surrounded or revolves around Minato, our main character, who is suffering from target panic. Target panic has been also characterized as someone who has a fear of not hitting the target, so much so that the target gets smaller and smaller and shrinks as they try to hit it. So Minato is someone that's suffering from this. He is in high school right now, and has joined a new high school. He's a first year, and he has no interest in joining his archery team, or otherwise known as Kyudo team. Kyudo, I believe, is the name of the art form of archery, due to the fact that it's not small bows that they're using, it's rather large bows that they're using, and there's a very specific manner, I think, in style in which you would use these. A lot of components of the show that I'm learning about is obviously about the bows, the name of the sport, additionally that you can play this in a team manner. I didn't know that. I thought archery overall in general was computed on a individual or solo aspect, but there's a team component to it. So all sorts of things that I'm learning from this show. And I think this is what kind of inspired me to create this list, because I am learning all sorts of stuff from these sports and like what goes into them. But nonetheless, so Minato, what I appreciate is that while he tries to overcome his target panic, there are moments where he has epiphanies and realizations as to what may be causing some of this target panic. But like anything in life, progress is not linear. It's usually cyclical or up and down. So there are moments in which he'll have an epiphany as to, you know what? I think I know what's causing this. and like he's able to actually hit the target, but at the same time, he slips up and his target panic returns again. So it just goes to prove that character building and development is not always linear, it's cyclical. And it goes to show that for some of the other characters as well. And I love that they also take an opportunity to allow an adult, their coach, to evolve and grow along with his athletes, his students, for lack of a better word. So like there are a lot of nice components to Surunai that I appreciated, aside from learning something brand new. Next on the list is a sport that I've indulged in casually, and I feel like a good portion of us have, and it's rock wall climbing. But have you ever really watched it in a competitive sense? And did you know that it is a sport in the Olympics? Well, I did not. Our next one on the list is called Iwa Kakeru. Iwa Kakeru is a female team of high school students that are competitive rock wall climbers. And our main character, Konami, who used to be a gaming addict, kind of looking for something new in high school, gives up gaming to kind of fit in, make friends, so on and so forth. It stumbles upon a rock climbing wall. This rock climbing wall, upon initial inspection, looks like a puzzle to her. And if I neglected to mention, the type of gaming addict that she used to be was a puzzle gaming addict. So kind of think about Candy Crush or games like that of the sort. She was really good at it. I think she used to win prizes and like be well known for it. But since she's given up that life, she's kind of lacklustering and looking for something new to do. And wall rock climbing seems to be the next best thing that she can approach. She's kind of almost instantaneously able to climb and accomplish routes on, an intermediate difficulty within the first episode, which, to be super frank, as an athlete myself, spent many years playing soccer and fenced in college. Usually when you pick up a sport, it's not that easy. Understandably so, if you used to kind of be an athlete and you try to give your hand at another sport, you may find it easier than someone else who's a non-athlete. So seeing as Konami's character used to be a hardcore gamer, not someone who was the outdoorsy athletic type, for her to be able to grasp on so quickly due to her puzzle solving mindset was a little far-fetched to me. But overall, I enjoyed the anime for one, the animation. The way that they kind of try to translate wall rock climbing in Konami's head to a puzzle game is really cute, and it's beautifully eye-popping with the different colors that they try to use, and the way that they try to animate her climbing the wall but in a gaming sense. And additionally, learning a new aspect about wall rock climbing. So did you know that there are actually 3 different types of wall rock climbings? There's bouldering, speed, and lead. And they compete in all different aspects. It's not just 1 or 2 people that, compete in one and somebody competes in the other, but rather they compete in all different types of rock climbing styles? I wonder what's the right word for that. But in different capacities, they do wall rock climbing. And for that aspect, and she does get some training as well. So while a little bit of it is far-fetched, I appreciate that she at least got a little bit of a training arc, because if she didn't, then this probably wouldn't be on the list. But because they actually tried to, level set a little bit, pull some irregularities out of the storyline, and try to level set for viewers, because this is a sports anime still at the end of the day. I do like that they gave her a training arc, emphasized that even though she was very good mindset-wise at figuring out the different routes really quickly, which turns out to be her specialty, training is an extremely important part of wall rock climbing, because it takes a lot of stamina, especially to compete in different types of, rock wall climbing proficiencies. A good portion of these sports are actually on the list in terms of Olympics. So I think archery is in Olympics. Not only is wall rock climbing in the Olympics, but water polo is also in the Olympics as well. And I think that's kind of what inspired me to watch this next anime. While watching the Summer Olympics in Tokyo, there was water polo, and it kind of just, was on TV while I turned it on one day, and what really captivated me right away was the range and motion of the athletes' like shoulders and shoulder blades to kind of torque the ball. If you don't know what water polo is, it's essentially like handball in the water. So people have to constantly be swimming around, staying afloat, dribbling the ball in between their arms, trying to score a goal. So you've got a goalie and you've got players on the field. I believe that there are a total of 7 players. Now I'm getting into technicality, so let's move on. But water polo was really engaging for me in that aspect, and I was just like, you know what, I know nothing about the sport, and I know animes are really good at explaining some basic beginner stuff to people who have never been exposed to certain things before, like certain sports. So without further ado, Remain, title of this next anime, because I rambled quite a bit there, didn't I? So Remain is a water polo anime, and also with a character name of Minato. We are first introduced to him in a hospital bed, actually, and he's been in a coma, I want to say, for close to a year. I think it was 200 days, due to a car accident that he got into, which resulted in him losing 3 years of his memory, more specifically all of his middle school memories. And during middle school, he kind of made a name for himself and became like all best of Japan in water polo. But due to the fact that he's kind of been in a coma, lost his memory, and been motionless for close to a year, he's suffering from muscle dysmorphia. So therefore, like his muscle definition and all his build that he used to have, in some of the photos, he saw himself as disappeared. In addition to that, it seems like he hadn't really played water polo prior to middle school, so he forgot all the rules and everything that goes along with it. So this is kind of like a trauma plus learn something new sort of situation. So we've got both sports dilemmas in Remain, where Minato has to kind of relearn water polo. And in addition to that, he has to rebuild his muscle definition and everything else that goes with him, I guess you could say, when it comes to playing water polo all over again. But they introduced an element into the show, I want to say about halfway through or close to the end, where he actually ends up regaining his memory. But instead of regaining all of his memory and retaining his new memories, he actually forgot his new memories and regained all of his old memories, which creates kind of a difficult situation for the team that he's currently on, because at some point he does join a brand new water polo team that's not inclusive of his old friends and his old school, since he kind of forgot about them. But with remembering his old life, there becomes like a difference in the type of person he is. There's actually a huge contrast in his personality, and it introduces a new dynamic. So what I would say overall is that this show not only is very educational in terms of water polo, you'll learn a lot in terms of like what type of trainings they go through, muscle movement, just the amount of muscle development that they need to do full body, like core, legs, arms. Obviously there's swimming incorporated, but you would never think how much your body needs to be engaged while you're not swimming. And not only are they giving characters moments to grow physically as athletes, but they're introducing complex character dynamics that I think are really well done and well written. Like, I appreciated that. And it was animated by Mappa, our very good friend who has animated Attack on Titan and Yuri on Ice and some of these very well-known, beautifully well-done animations. It's got a lot going for it. Remain is like an A++ on my list. Did you know that badminton is also another Olympic sport? And the next show on our list is Salarymans Club, or Ryman's Club, otherwise known as. Salarymans Club is surrounding basically a group or team of actually adult players. So a good portion of these players play for companies, and our main character, Mikoto, plays for a banking firm. This banking firm hired him, I guess you could say, solely for playing badminton, which is a very strange concept, because you gotta do your job too. But these badminton competitions that I believe these companies do are for like, recognition, name branding, like probably potential new sponsorships, so on and so forth. So I think there's something to gain in it. But overall, being that he is solely hired to be a badminton player for the company and not just a, employee, there are really high expectations for him to accomplish things. And at this company, he's currently playing singles. If you didn't know, badminton is played in two different forms. You're either playing singles or you're playing doubles, kind of like tennis if you've seen tennis. And our main character, Mikoto, is actually struggling to produce results. Being that he actually used to be a doubles player for most of his badminton career, and for him to switch to singles is quite strange, especially since he performs best in that manner and that structure. But due to some trauma that you'll later find out when you watch the show, he kind of doesn't play doubles anymore, and a good portion of his performance is inhibited by this trauma. Now that leads us to, I guess, some of the plot points for the rest of the show. He's let go from the banking firm that he plays for because he doesn't accomplish much and they expected more out of him, but he gets picked up by another company called Sunlight Beverage. Sunlight Beverage has picked him up to play badminton, but they also expect him to be a top-tier employee as well. This is a strange concept for him, so he has a really hard time fitting in with the company and his new teammates. So basically, long story short, we're kind of watching Mikoto, stumble and fall a bit as an adult, which I can appreciate, because we all do. And he's trying to find his way out there. But more than anything, when it comes to playing sports and as an adult, you're probably still playing sports because you're an athlete, or a professional athlete, rather. And most adults who used to play sports, like in high school or college, don't play sports in a very heavy competitive sense anymore. And as you watch the show, you'll come to realize how insanely competitive these teams are in the show. And if you've watched the Olympics, and badminton in the Olympics in particular, badminton is insanely fast. So they capture some of these top-tier professional level plays by some of these characters, which is really cool because you only really see this in high school animes, or if it's an anime about pro athletes or something of that nature, but never about like a bunch of adults who play for brand recognition at their companies, if that makes sense. Long story short, we get to watch Mikoto rediscover, his potential, and he is forced to play doubles again at this new company, which, again, we get to actually learn what Mikoto is really about when he's able to play at full capacity. Last but not least on the list is Chihayafuru. Now, I got into Chihayafuru because I was basically looking into some new romances, and the internet said that Chihayafuru was a great romance to watch. Don't let the internet lie to you guys. Sometimes the internet really, really baits you into certain concepts. Because guess what? Chihayafuru is actually a sports anime. And a sport that I've never heard of. Now, that article didn't necessarily lie to me. There is romance in Chihayafuru, but it's mostly sports-centric. And it's surrounded around the sport of Karuta. Karuta is essentially but competitive Karuta is a card game that's mostly, maybe solely played in Japan, where you've got 100 Japanese poems that are supposed to be memorized by the players of this game, and there is a professional reader that reads each and every card, and the idea of the game is to be able to capture the card on the playing field before your opponent does. And the way to win is that you clear all of the cards on your side. The way that you do that is when you capture a card either on your side or your opponent's side, because both sides are fully in play. If you capture a card on your opponent's side, you'll send the card over. And if you capture a card obviously on your side, you remove that from the playing field, and that diminishes your overall card count. So, it goes to say that Karuta is definitely something, just this the sport itself was something brand new that I learned when watching Chihayafuru, whereas some of the other sports on this list, I kind of had an inkling of an idea as to like the existence of the sport, whereas this, we were starting from basically ground zero, and I've learned a lot about Karuta through Chihayafuru. Almost all of my knowledge is from Chihayafuru. But again, rambling, onto the storyline. Our main character, Chihaya, and she's basically a competitive Karuta player in high school for the most part, starts her own Karuta club, and one of her love interests, you could say, Tai Chi, helps her stand that club up. And what I appreciate about the show is that they do a good job, and the show has a lot of longevity as opposed to some of the other shows I've talked about on this list, where most of them range from 12 to 14 episodes, whereas Chihayafuru has 3 seasons, averaging about 25 episodes per season, totaling 75 episodes for the entirety of the show. There's hopes that it will be fully animated, considering that the manga is almost done. And honestly, if they don't finish animating it, I am gonna write a petition, because I'm gonna be super pissed if they don't finish Chihayafuru. Anyway, so with Chihayafuru, I appreciate that they explain her inspiration into starting Karuta. And it starts off with one of her now very good friends, Arata. Arata is the inspiration for her starting Karuta, and actually, her starting Karuta and her being interested in Karuta is Tai Chi's inspiration for also getting into it. So it's kind of like a domino effect. And if you couldn't have guessed, Arata and Tai Chi are both interested in Chihaya, and Chihaya is solely interested in Karuta, because she basically wants to become the best in Japan, and that is otherwise known as the Queen. You've got the Queen and the Meiju when it comes to Karuta. Meiju is another word for master. So we kind of get an understanding as to Chihaya's childhood, what her inspirations are for Karuta, why she's kind of in this place in her life, and we get to watch her grow over the longevity of the show. But Chihayafuru knows that Chihaya would be nothing without all of her teammates and her classmates. So not only do they give Chihaya the opportunity to grow as a Karuta player, but they also give her an opportunity to grow personally, as well as all of her classmates, colleagues, teammates, and rivals. Because her rivals are also inspired by her hardworking ethics, and they want to surpass and beat her as well. So we're seeing a lot of character growth amongst a plethora of characters. We could say that there are easily like 20 something rotating like sub characters or supporting characters or sub main characters throughout the course of the show. So it's really well balanced, I would say, in giving characters growth. And even if you haven't seen it in the anime yet, they are definitely doing it in the manga as they're, about to finish it. So Chihayafuru, if anything else, as opposed to a lot of certain shows where they try to focus mostly on the core, like very, very core main characters, which could total any number from probably 5 at the most, because character development is really tricky. They try to essentially flesh out all of their characters and flesh out the meaning of Karuta for them. Because at the end of the day, what they feel about the sport and their attachment to the sport is kind of what drives them, and it drives their growth as athletes, but also as their growth as individuals personally. Wonderful. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video today. If anything else, I hope you learned something new. It's something that I'm really passionate about when it comes to watching animes in general. If I learn something new, it's like a triple win, especially if I enjoyed the anime and the storyline is great. But I think that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. I appreciate all of your support and continued viewership. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, or share. That would really give me an indicator as to, if you all are actually enjoying this. But until next time, I'm Mel, the host of this channel. This is AniMel, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye!